All right, Brendan Telfer joins us. As he does, courtesy of JK's World of Golf. Welcome to the show, Telf. Well, let's talk one-day cricket to start with, mate, because the ICC have come out and said, hey, look, there's waning interest in this, and outside the T20s and the Test matches, we've got to try and find some time in the calendar to play it. And what they're thinking of is every 4 years have a one-day World Cup, but in the intervening years, pretty much play no one-day cricket for 2 years. Would you miss it?
Probably not. I mean, I think arguably three forms of the game being contested at every level, basically from, provincial level to international, including World Cups, is just a little much for cricket, isn't it? It's probably better off with just two forms of the game. And T20 seems to have struck a chord that 50-over cricket's never been able to do because of the dead overs after 20 overs, 50-over cricket. And so I think that's just a realistic acknowledgement that it's kind of become a bit redundant, 50-over cricket. But why persevere with it in any form then?
Yeah, look, I mean, I like the One Day World Cup, and I'm going to watch that. But I think that's just because I've liked it since I first started watching it. And I think the first tournament I watched was 1983, and so it's just been more of habit, I suppose. But what I just asked the question: when's the last one day series we played? Can you actually remember?
Well, I think it was against India or Pakistan, wasn't it?
See?
Pakistan.
Yeah.
Pakistan.
It was. We played 5. Yeah.
It was only a few months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can't remember any of the results, can you?
Well, yeah, I think it was we won 2, they won 3, didn't we?
I'm pretty sure you're right.
The other way around.
Okay. Before then, who did we play? I must confess, when I saw the itinerary, just before they went away, I must confess, I think, why are they playing 5 one-dayers? No one plays 5 one-dayers anymore. There was a time when countries like Australia and England and the West Indies would play 7 one-dayers in a series. But I was surprised they were playing 5, and it's unusual. I can't think of another example where there have been 5 one-dayers between two of the tier 1 countries in recent years. But I don't think I'll miss it somehow if it goes. Okay, let's talk about the Ashes then. Andre Adams was on with us today talking about this. It's just been a brilliant series, hasn't it? And if anyone says that there's no place for Test cricket or Test cricket can't financially sustain themselves, well, this is a perfect example that it absolutely can. The other great thing about it is I just love the continued storylines about it. Look, any sport in the world that can get a prime minister of a country involved, you're hitting home runs, aren't you? I mean, because that's what, once you make it on from the back page onto the front page, you know something good's going on.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. And I saw another Prime Minister, I saw John Howard at the Test match, the one that's just finished as well. So, Mick Jagger's been there somewhere, I understand, as well.
He loves his cricket.
So, yeah. And one of the things I've loved is seeing a full house on the last day of a cricket test. You never see that. Even one of the curious paradoxes about these Boxing Day test matches they have at the Melbourne Cricket Grounds. They get 90,000 people there on the first day of a test match when you never do get a result on the first day of a test match. And on the 5th day, when the test match is decided, there's usually about 10,000 people at the MCG. It's very weird, isn't it, how it's the only sporting event I know where big crowds turn up for the start, but no one's there really at the end. But in this series, the Ashes series, every seat apparently has been sold every day for all 5 tests. Yeah, you can't get 400 quid it is, mate, because Craig Cummings over there at the moment. Wow. And he tried to get, and he said it was 1,500 in the corporate boxes or lounges, 400 quid. And I know you can't compare. I don't do it dollar for dollar. Just even think about that here in New Zealand. $400 for a ticket to go to one day of a test match. I mean, and these are being snapped up. Meanwhile, though, Telf, Grant Robertson has turned around and says that New Zealanders, we need to pull our finger out, that it's not good enough that less than half of the tickets have been sold to the FIFA Women's World Cup. Do you think he knows that he's actually created this cost of living crisis we're all living with? Well, it's a bit tough to blame him. Well, he's been the finance minister for 6 years, mate. Who else do you blame? Well, what about the calibre of the football that's on offer? Well, there is that. Is that not a reason why people haven't bought tickets? Well, I mean, it's a demand-supply equation. It's basic economics, isn't it? I mean, if you aren't selling, you can think that you've got the best jeans in the shop in the whole of the street, but if no one's coming in to buy them, they aren't the best jeans, are they? I think it shows, dare I say, without wishing to be too condescending, perhaps a little bit of ignorance and arrogance on the part of sports fans in New Zealand. I don't think we have yet bought into the idea that a Women's Football World Cup is a really big deal, up there with almost the Men's Rugby World Cup, if not the Men's Football World Cup. And so it hasn't really come of age in the minds of a lot of people in New Zealand yet. Yeah. I think it will be by the end of the tournament, which is a bit late. But, I mean, I don't know, as I mentioned last week, I bought tickets for the match against Norway next week. And when I first went online, it was to get some tickets. I was greeted by the sign, sold out.
Wow.
Sold out.
Okay.
So,
but no, I tell you, you've got some tickets. I mean, this is two things to this, mate. One, the football ferns aren't a great example because their track record over the last few years has been terrible. Plus, their record at World Cups is even worse. They continually bottle it. If you watch the game against Vietnam the other night, it's not a great standard of football. But putting that aside, I do agree with you. It's a massive tournament. It really is. I mean, when you look at the viewing numbers, I mean, it gets, over 1 billion or 2 billion or something across the world. But it's a bit like the Rugby World Cup, mate, in that what people are going to find out, there's some really good teams and they are worth watching. And then the drop-off is quite dramatic. Like, we're only 6 places above Vietnam. But that Vietnam side that I saw the other day, they wouldn't beat a boys' 11-year-old team, mate. They looked really poor. Really poor.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. They ranked 32 or something in the world, weren't they? So I couldn't get too excited over beating Vietnam. But I think what will happen that once the tournament starts, interest will start to accelerate very quickly.
I agree.
And a lot of those tickets will be sold once people say, hey, this is a real deal. This is fantastic sport we're watching here. So I can't wait for it to start, actually. I mean, and I don't profess to have a great deal of knowledge about too many teams other than the American team and the New Zealand team. But I'm sure there will be some fantastic football matches. And having said that, where is it? Is it on Sky, I suppose? Is it?
Yeah, look, it's all over Sky. Look, every single match has been broadcast. Remember also, we hosted the under-17 men's in 1999. We hosted the under-20s in 2015. And those matches were just about all sold out. And the football was brilliant to watch. So, I agree with you. One of the things, if you remember, go back to 2011, that rugby did, which was very clever, for the Rugby World Cup, is that all the smaller towns in New Zealand were kind of urged, they were hosting teams and urged to adopt those teams. Like, I remember for New Plymouth, it was along the lines of, if your letterbox was an even number, support the United States, and if it was an odd number, support Russia, because those two teams played in New Plymouth. These kind of things actually help people okay, I've got a reason to go, or I've got a reason to support. Because look, there wasn't a Kalashnikov in the phone book, but I mean, the fact is that half the town turned up there with Russian flags supporting Russia. So maybe, I don't know, they haven't actually, to me, I mean, FIFA aren't that great at promoting. They're great at freebies if they want to give you a freebie, but they're not that great to me at promoting these things as well as they should.
Yeah, the other thing here is that there's most of the matches in New Zealand are group matches, aren't they?
Yeah,
yes,
we get a semi-final, a couple of quarters, matches. I think,
Australia have picked the sort of eyes out of this World Cup and have got all of the best matches, and I guess they get best group matches by and large over there. But I think there's how many teams in New Zealand? Is there 12 teams, I think, in New Zealand, isn't there? And they've all, I like this idea where about a year or so ago, those 12 teams or representatives of those teams came to New Zealand, and FIFA, I suppose, picked up the tab, but they were shown all of the potential training venues in various cities around the country, and they could choose which ones they liked according to their seeding. So the United States had the first pick, and I don't know who was the 12th ranked team that's here. And so I think the United States have chosen East Coast Base, haven't they, as their venue for where they'll do all their training and practice. And FIFA apparently kicked in $500,000 to upgrade the changing facilities. And I think they've done this to a few other venues as well. I know where the New Zealand team is training and is based at Keith Park, right, and the boundary fences with the Akarana Golf Club. So they've laid a completely new surface. I think it's an artificial surface they've laid there for this Auckland United, which is the new Three Kings club out there in that part of Auckland. So football clubs around New Zealand, or 12
benefiting
of them anyway, are getting huge input thanks to FIFA.
Hey, not just that. That if your club is actually where the referees or the linos practice, you get a nice new pitch as well. So I mean, look, and New Zealand football doesn't have this money, so that's actually one benefit that will actually we'll actually see it many years to come. Let's change our our tack to the All Blacks then, because I was impressed. I thought that we played bloody well against Argentina. 3 tries in the opening. Well, I thought 3 tries in the opening 11 minutes blew the game out. From that point on, when you're up 36 at halftime, you're never in international rugby going to double the score because they bring on 6 or 7 new players off the bench, which is really disruptive. So I thought we did enough in the first 20 minutes to win it. But you disagree. All right,
Martin.
go on.
No. That's pathetic. When I last checked, the game of rugby went for 80 minutes, not 11. Yeah, they were.
Yeah, but we'd won it after 11 minutes.
Well, but a good team doesn't just take its foot off the accelerator. And for the second half, they looked a bit like the All Blacks we've seen in recent years. Coupled with the fact that the South African B team took Australia to the cleaners, and it's the South African A team, basically, that we're going to see at Mount Smart Stadium this weekend. I bet you it's not a 41-12 scoreline this week in favour of the All Blacks.
Well, guess what? The TAB have got us $1.33 in South Africa, $3.30. Can you believe that? I mean, I would have thought they'd be $1.60 and $1.80 or something, but they've completely written off the South African side.
Blind patriotism, I suppose.
Yeah, maybe.
It'll be a far better test. I mean, there was a few things there that left me a bit sort of, disappointed. I thought Mackenzie's goal kicking was awful. If he kicks like that in a World Cup playoff match in a few months' time, we won't be in the World Cup for very long once it gets to the knockout stage. So his goal kicking was average. By and large, I thought he didn't play too badly. But I'm very intrigued to see what they do this week and who they put in the starting jersey for number 10.
Well, who do you think it is, mate? We know who it is. Come on, it's Mwanga, mate.
I'm trying to think of what Foster's going through here again, because he's got nothing to lose. He might be inclined to think, well, yeah, Mackenzie wasn't too bad overall, but how's he going to go against one of the top teams at the Rugby World Cup? Let's start him against the Springboks, and if he doesn't work, we can always bring Moanga in quickly after, shortly after half time. I'm inclined to think they might give him another go and start at number 10, but I'd say that if Foster hadn't been shown the door, he would have played the safe option here and started with Moanga. But I think he's got a bit more freedom to do what his instinct tells him he'd quite like to do. So he might give Mackenzie another shot at number 10 in the starting jersey.
I disagree. I think he's going to play Moanga, because I think what has to happen is, especially against a team like this, is we have to start playing our A team now. We've got 4 games left before we play France. That's it. So, you've got to get your combinations going, and I think that this will be the strongest side he can possibly put out. But let's go through that backline. If that's the case, the midfield's not going to change, is it? Geordie and Rico are going to play, right?
Yeah, my backline would be Beauden Barrett at fullback. I think he's kind of, spent all his chips at number 10, and I think he looked a lot more comfortable and was able to run more, so I'd go with him at fullback. I think they'll go with Talia and Jordan on the wings. They've got lots of good options here. Yeah, Ioane will start at centre, and Geordie Barrett at second 5. Well, we'll see what happens at first 5'8", and Smith will start at halfback. But he's got options, which is good, which we haven't always had in recent times. I'm sure the old locking combination will come back.
Is he going to risk Sam Whitelock, do you think? I mean, because...
yeah, I think he will.
Okay.
I think Retallick and Whitelock will come back.
In that case, does Scott Barrett go to 6? Because this is... No, you think they'll still play Frizzell there?
I'd play Frizzell. I thought he was very good in Mendoza.
Okay.
And in the front row, or De Groot, Tuka, who I think will probably start at hooker, and I don't know enough about the front row to tell you who
Lomax,
the other
mate. Yeah, they'll stick with the same. Yeah.
But
okay, well, we've got a South African side that they sent 12 players over here. 10 of those have been picked to start. Okay? It's a pretty ferocious looking team that we're up against. Really physical. And so 9 are starting. Sorry. So that means what? That means that we just expect the South Africans to play like they're going to play. Lots of box kicks.
Well, it's a downside to what they've done, the South Africans. These 9 or 10 players are having their first run in the Springbok team, so they haven't been in a test match with the Springbok jersey on with these other guys. The All Black side has, of course, with that run they had in Mendoza last week. So I think that will give the All Blacks some little bit of advantage, and we're at home. I imagine it's going to be wet and cold and probably a bit soft down there at Mount Stadium.
Hello?
Yeah. So I don't think it'll be a very high-scoring game, but I would still expect the All Blacks to win.
Brendan, I just know that you are of the... brigade that hoed into Sam Cane because he did what everyone thinks he should have done, which is if you're a pitch invader, I don't care how you get taken or kicked off the field, get off the goddamn field. But I know that you'll be sitting there in your liberal do-gooder left-wing state of mind, mate, and saying that Sam Cane this, Sam Cane that. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, I am pleased. I actually went on TV3's breakfast show the other morning and I was asked about it, and I said, I just hope that the sticky beaks of the judiciary committees that hover around organisations like the Rugby Championship stay away from this. Yes, you could argue that he has breached the player code of conduct by what he did, even if it didn't take place during the game. And they dish out red cards, yellow cards and penalties left, right and centre for all sorts of minor infractions in rugby these days. So I thought they'll look at this thing, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if they say, no, this is unacceptable behaviour by an All Black captain, stand them down for a couple of weeks. But I'm pleased to say that they have kept their sticky beaks and noses out of this thing completely and left it alone. And I think it's, if anything, it's enhanced the standing of Sam Cane.
I do too.
He owned up to it. He owned up straight away to it. He didn't get, pushed into a corner by PR waffle and media minders and said, say nothing, and it'll go away. He said, no, I want to apologise. He publicly chastised himself for what he did. And if you look at it, he didn't actually kick the guy. He
didn't
trip
kick
him up.
No, he didn't
and it's a subtle difference maybe, but
I think it's an important difference, mate. It's an important difference because, look, the way that, and look, this was just an absolute clickbait fest, wasn't it? Especially from the two television networks who led their news with it that night.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Really. Hey, look, and I'll actually disagree with you. When you read his the comments that were put out on Instagram, there's no way that he wrote those. Those were written for him or on his behalf.
Well, I think the first piece he came from him because he publicly chastised himself. Now, PR people never, ever fess up to something that you've done, even if you are absolutely guilty. But he did. And so I thought, good on you, mate. You've done this quickly. And I think he got in. He probably knew that the PR people were going to come up with something different. And I think they took down his initial comments, which he posted somewhere on his, Instagram account or somewhere. But I thought, no, this is why I like Sam Cane. This is partly why I want to see him stay as captain, because he's got real leadership qualities. Okay, yes, he admitted there that he sort of had a bit of a rush of blood and he stuck his foot out and tried to trip the kid up. In years to come, when he retires, who's going to care about what happened in a team huddle after a game in Mendoza, for God's sake? Yeah.
But I mean, but what do you think should be done? I mean, I've actually come up with a plan for pitch invaders, mate. What they should be done, I reckon, is that they should be hog-tied, they should be muzzled, but their eyes should be basically sellotaped open, and then they should be made to sit through a 6-hour New Zealand rugby board meeting. How about that?
No, I'm putting all the blame on a 66-year-old woman living in England at the moment by the name of Erica Rowe. Do you remember Erica Rowe?
Not Roe versus Wade, that one? No?
No. Erica Rowe was the woman.
She was the one. Oh, okay. Yeah, that was the one with the police helmet. She with the big knockers and the police helmet had to... Yeah, okay, right. I remember that photo, yeah. Okay.
Well, I describe her as topless and muscular, but and she ran onto the pitch at Twickenham in the match between Australia and England, and tangled with Billy Beaumont, who was the English captain at the time, and that started all of this pitch invasion and streakers and protesters. But the only way you can stop it, Martin, is basically if you wheel out a roll of barbed wire and put it down where the grass meets the bottom row of the seats from grandstands. And I think in English football a few years back, to stop hooliganism, they were doing things like that, weren't they? But now the security measures are such that if anyone tries to get onto the field, they're taken out very quickly. Yes, we've seen two examples in recent weeks where these more astute professional protesters, these oil protesters at Lord's and at Wimbledon, have managed to get into the centre of both the tennis courts and the cricket ground and cause a bit of trouble. But it's been going on for 40 years. Remember, a year prior to Erica Rowe, 100 pitch invaders got onto the field at Rugby Park in Hamilton and stopped the rugby.
Well, that was okay. I think there's a real difference. Brendan Telfer is with the courtesy of JK's World of Golf, 24/7 out there at the airport. Look, there's a difference between pitch invaders and there's a difference between streakers, and there's a difference between streakers and protesters. I think they're all actually different.
Anyway, Martin, before you chop you off, I think we should touch on this interesting case with Caster Semenya, the South African athlete who's been at the centre of one of these kind of gender rows for a number of years. Have you caught up with this finding?
No, I haven't.
Finding that's come down
from
the European Court of Human Rights. Have come down and have ruled in favour of Semenya and have said that she has been clearly demonstrated by International Athletics, this is the IAAF, which forced her to medically reduce her natural testosterone count, or else she was not able to compete in women's events.
Wow.
Now, this is different from the transgender row, but it's kind of in that sort of general field, is that she was born a female, but was born with a very high testosterone count, more commensurate with what you'd expect in men. And as a result, the IAAF came down with this peculiar ruling where they banned her from running in the 800 metres, but allow her to compete in long-distance events where they claim the testosterone level is less of a factor in determining who wins a race. She's fought for 4 years with a lot of support from South Africa, and eventually took it to this very high ranking and prestigious tribunal, the European Court of Human Rights, which I think probably is more important in the Court of Arbitration in sport, where a lot of these international sports bodies go to get rulings. Also in the finding, they came up with a really interesting piece of advice for international sports bodies and said, quote, and I'm reading from the judgment here, sports bodies must finally recognise that human rights law and norms apply to athletes regardless of what sport and their gender. And I think it's just taking a shot at these sports bodies who very conveniently have decided, nope, the easiest way to solve this transgender problem is if you were born a male, doesn't matter if you decide 20 years later to become a woman, you can only compete in men's events, which is, in my thinking, completely against the trend of social thinking on this area. It's rather like the attitude that many had towards gay people until homosexual law reform started taking place in many parts of the world, including New Zealand, to give gays some kind of equality or equality with heterosexual people. And this smacks a wee bit of that now, this decision to have this hard and fast transgender rule. If you're born a male, that's it. No more. You can't compete as a woman, even if you have gone through all of the medical processes and changed your gender to a woman. So it'll be interesting to see what the ramifications are for sport from this finding from this tribunal.
Finally, can we stop talking about Lydia Ko, please? She's as relevant at major championships as Michael Campbell is. I mean, I respect her immensely. She's done it, she's won it, but she's never going to do it again, is she? Come on.
She's had a terrible year. There's no question about it. In the 3 major championships this year, she missed the cut in the first one. She was 57th a couple of weeks ago in the US PGA, and she was 33rd the other day, last week in the US Open. It is mystifying. I can't understand why the number 1 ranked golfer in the world, and she fully deserved that ranking. There was nothing fortuitous about that ranking at the end of last year. She just can't seem to find anything like the game that she's had for the last 12 months. She's got 2 majors left, but I'm starting to wonder now, like Rory McIlroy, who, like Lydia, has gone about 30-odd majors in a row without a win in a major championship, whether either of them will ever win a major again. Sad to say.
Thank you so much, mate. We'll talk again next Wednesday. Love it to bits. BTE, the Bread of Telfer Experience.